Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to another episode of the Scho Bro Show. This is behind the steel curtain editor Dave Schofield coming at you. It's Tuesday night. Oh my goodness, it's 9:20. But where else would you rather be as a Steelers fan? With me, as always, except when he's not, is my big brother Rich. Rich, the reason for us being late tonight. How's it going?
Ice, baby.
I was going to say, how's that bus feel that I just threw you under?
Actually, I was going to go in there and say, no, Steel Dog. I was going to say, hey, Steel Dog, not technical issues. I had my other paying gig tonight going on. I had to call a basketball game at college where I work.
Announce, not officiate, so people understand. You do the color commentating, or however what do they call it? MC?
No, I'm not the color commentator. Really, just announcing.
Okay. From way downtown. Yeah.
From downtown.
Yeah.
For 3.
Yep.
So,
and it's icy up where you are.
And it's icy up here. So I was a little slow getting home. And if anybody sees me during this looking at my phone, things like that, my wife has actually went to Kyle's game over in West Virginia, about an hour and a half away, and they're trying to get home by not taking the interstate because the interstate is closed due to ice and accidents.
Yes. So if you hear a long soliloquy or monologue or whatever you want to call it of me talking and for those of you watching live, Big Bro Scho disappearing, that might be why. Or it might be a regular Tuesday.
I was going to say what.
I lost you. You muted yourself. So it's back to me, and I didn't do it either. Let's see if I could. There, I just tried to unmute you, and it's still not working. So it's just me. You need to do it on StreamYard, there, bro. I can't do it either. It's not your mic; it's on the computer.
Got it. So, my connection wasn't quite tight, and I went to tighten it up. It actually loosened it at first.
What? It wasn't quite tight because Rich, you got to know.
Everybody else gets a little tight.
No tight.
Yeah, that's what it is. But we got to get to the Steelers, man. But even before we get to the Steelers, something else we are going to talk about just a little bit.
Playoffs.
Yeah, that's right.
Playoffs. Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs.
Yes, we're going to talk to playoffs because you know why? There were 2 games that happened this weekend. We're not going to spend a lot of time talking about them, but
nope.
I have an article coming out on the website tomorrow. That's how we're bringing this back. BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. Article coming out tomorrow that's basically giving a refresher course on something that might be coming up with the league later on this year, and that is do you think do you think the NFL brings back something similar to what they had as their quote-unquote third quarterback rule that they had from 1991 through 2010? Do you think the NFC Championship game is going to bring back some form of that rule?
Maybe.
That game was ugly.
The game was ugly, and Brock Purdy then having to go back into the game hurt.
And finding out how hurt he was later.
Yeah.
My goodness. He's got he's going to be out for 6 months.
I know.
Yeah.
He had no business having to go back in that game, but what else could they do? They needed, sure, he just kept turn around, hand the ball off.
He threw 2 passes right around the line of scrimmage.
2 passes,
might have even been
4 yards.
Yep. And the only other pass attempt was a long pass attempt by Christian McCaffrey. That was it in a game that they were trailing significantly and needed to get back in. It made for a very disappointing product. I mean, did you think there was any way they could, without the defense scoring a touchdown, did you really see any way that San Fran was going to be able to get back to that game? It was going to be hard enough with a healthy quarterback.
Wouldn't know. I didn't get to see any of that game.
Oh, okay.
I was hunting.
You were
hunting.
hunting.
Be honest.
Okay.
I was hunting.
That's fine. But that's really what happened. The whole time I'm watching it, I'm like, I'm just putting in time watching this game because the outcome really isn't in doubt. I mean, there was 12 and a half minutes left in the third quarter when Josh Johnson went out with the concussion and Brock Purdy had to come back in. And as we know, the NFL loves to overreact. React and sometimes overreact to things that go on in their premier games. Specifically, the culprit is the NFC Championship game. Back in 2018, you remember that one? That was, if I remind you who was in the game, you might help remember, between the New Orleans Saints and Los Angeles Rams. Do you remember what happened there that caused the Steelers to lose to the Seahawks the next year?
No.
That
was where they thought they should be allowed to challenge for pass interference.
Yes, because a really bad pass interference call. I mean, you could make the argument that there might have been one specific angle that you couldn't see pass interference, because at first I'm like, I don't think that was pass interference. And then I saw another angle. I'm like, oh, that's definitely 100% pass interference. And the defender even admitted to trying to interfere because he didn't want to give up the touchdown, and they just didn't call it. So what did NFL do to react? No, let's make pass interference a reviewable and challengeable penalty, which you were at that game.
Oh, it was terrible.
And the standard for what was supposed to overturn a pass interference call was not utilized in that game. And that was a huge game-changing play in that game.
It was. And that was actually that game early in the season was the beginning of the end of that rule.
Yes, because if you noticed, they overturned that one. That was the Steelers-Seahawks Week 2. That was the game that Ben Roethlisberger got hurt in. It was Mason Rudolph ends, Russell Wilson to DK Metcalf. I mean, they called it on Terrell Edmonds, if you remember. Yeah. And it wasn't pass interference. It wasn't. Even on review, it wasn't. The rules official comes in, says, no, there's no way they consider doing this. And they overturn it. And if you notice, I think it took 8 weeks of the NFL season before they overturned another one, because they knew how bad it was that they overturned that one. So that was a rule change. There was a rule change last year it wasn't the AFC Championship game. It was the divisional round. Buffalo, Kansas City. Buffalo takes the lead, 13 seconds left. They give up a 13-second drive for a field goal to Kansas City. Goes to overtime. Kansas City wins the flip, scores a touchdown. Buffalo never touches the ball again. New rule in the playoffs. Both teams have to touch the ball, even if it's a touchdown. New rule for this year. So now, will that rule ever come into play? We will see. But this came back from 1990. There was a game where Washington, I'm afraid if I say their old mascot, that will get flagged on YouTube, because my goodness, if you say Washington's old mascot in a comment section on SB Nation, they automatically delete your comment. Kind of ridiculous, but that's who they were back in the 1990s. But
we could say the Washington Maroon.
Yes.
Something.
Okay. So, I'm not saying they shouldn't have changed the name. I'm just saying that's who they were then. So when people say that's who they were, it's kind of, yeah. But back to that, it was Brian Mitchell, the running back, had to come in and quarterback a game for them because they lost both of their quarterbacks. That was in 1990. I laid all this out. They made that rule change where basically if you had a quarterback on your inactive list, they would dress. They're still inactive. They would dress. And if there was an emergency, they could come into the game. But if they came in before the fourth quarter, then neither of the other two quarterbacks could come back in the game.
Correct. I actually kind of liked the way that was written then.
Do you know how many times that was implemented in 20 years?
I don't know. None.
Once. In the third to last game before the rule went away. So not the Super Bowl. It was an NFC Championship game.
Nice.
They were the early game. 2010. You know who was the later game? That was Steelers Jets.
Yes, it was. So that would have been Green Bay and
Chicago.
Okay.
And Jay Cutler gets hurt. And what was the name of the other guy? I can't remember. I wrote it down. Todd Collins, I think it was, came in. It was a name like that. couldn't complete a pass. So with a minute left in the third quarter, they brought in their third quarterback, Caleb Haney, who for the rest of the third quarter only handed the ball off. So it could have been the other quarterback and it wouldn't have made anything, but it didn't become an issue. They were down 14-0. He almost brought them back for the win. He had 2 touchdown drives, but unfortunately he also gave up a pick 6 and then another interception that ended the game. So that's the only time that rule is implemented. So we've gone on about that a little bit. So in other words, if you want to look at the 2022 Steelers, that would have meant that Mason Rudolph could have been in uniform, but just couldn't be utilized until the third quarter unless it was, or else he had to be the guy the rest of the way. Worthwhile?
Yeah. I would not be surprised to see that same rule back in effect.
Yeah. Do you know why they took that away?
Why?
In the CBA, it was during the lockout. Remember the lockout year?
Yep.
Yeah. The NFL coaches wanted the extra roster spot that would be, but not have to use it on a quarterback. That's when they moved from 45 to 46 players active. And now it's even 48. And there's nothing keeping a team from having 3 quarterbacks active, but it's going to be one of those 48. So now they even have 3 more players that they could use it on, and they don't. So now you're talking about another player that could be dressed. We'll see what happens in the offseason, but I have a feeling that'll be some interesting thing. I'll ask. A lot of people are wondering, because I know what Pittsburgh Dad had to say about this. You weren't one of those Steelers fans pulling for the Bengals, were you?
Oh, heck no.
Did you watch the episode this week?
I did, of course.
Where he's cashing everything because he was upset about Steelers fans that would cheer for the Bengals. Anyway, you have to go watch that. So interesting.
Kyle and I, we actually watched that game after we got home, and at the end, I was like, cue the crying Bengals lady.
Wow. Yeah. So, and then some people were upset with the officiating in that second game. I'll be honest with you. I was watching it, especially the second half, on my phone with no sound. So I wasn't getting a lot of it. I did turn on the sound to try to figure out what was going on the do-over. But other than that, I wasn't listening so I wasn't influenced by what they were saying on TV. I was just drawing my own opinions.
They were technically, and again, at first, I was kind of iffy, especially about the, redoing that third down. But then when they showed that official run in, and then when you actually figured out that the head referee had started the clock when he, announced and said.
And he wasn't supposed to
start the clock, and he wasn't supposed to. That official was correct.
He was right.
In to try to stop the play. Yeah. And once an official tries to stop a play, the rule is the play never happened. Done.
So it's not like they did anything they shouldn't have. It just kind of sucks. Now, and then what's even worse is then they call a penalty on, but which was a pass interference on the next play. But also you have to look back at that. Oh, defensive holding. Yeah, it was I wasn't listening at that time. I just saw the replay and I knew that's what it was. But they didn't score on that drive. They ended up, after that first down, they didn't get another first down. They ended up punting. And other than it changing a little bit of what the clock was, which ultimately would have been what the clock would have run off anyway from the play, it didn't really change all that much. So some interesting stuff. So that was NFL stuff. But let's get to
I don't care what anybody says. Mm-hmm. The play by the linebacker at the end of the game for the Bengals was a penalty.
It was a penalty. It was. I just feel bad for him because he was going hard trying to make a play and lost track of where the sideline was, and you just can't do that. Yep. Sometimes you get called for a penalty that you feel bad that it's a penalty, but it's still a penalty. There are times when players, they don't want to grab the face mask. They just happen to do it. It doesn't mean that you're trying to do it. It's just one of those things. So interesting matchup for the Super Bowl. First time after Philly won the game, I knew going into the next game, it was either going to be the first time you have 2 African-American quarterbacks going up against each other in the Super Bowl, or it would have been, if the Bengals would have won, the first time 2 quarterbacks with 3 years or under experience in the NFL would have been matched up in the Super Bowl. So it would have been one or the other. So yeah, I did an article that got a lot of good discussion going about the whole notion of winning a championship with a quarterback that's not on a rookie deal. I mean, you realize you have to go back to 2016. Was it 2018? Which I'm getting my years mixed up. I don't know if it's the right year. It might be 2018. You have to go all the way back. You might remember to the Patriots Falcons Super Bowl to be the last time it was two veteran quarterbacks matched up in the Super Bowl. Ever since then, at least one of those quarterbacks has been on a rookie contract. So, and it was the whole idea of if you spend a bunch of money on a quarterback where they're a high salary cap hit, it's hard to go win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It's really hard, you know? I'm pretty sure with my research, the highest salary cap Super Bowl winning quarterback is Tom Brady when he was with the Buccaneers at $25 million. Think of what the salary cap is now. That's just a number. What really tells you is the percentage, meaning as the salary cap goes up, how much of a percentage it is. But that's one of those things that's tough. If you look at it, Ben Roethlisberger, he won one Super Bowl in his rookie contract. His other Super Bowl was the first year of his new contract, which means it had a low cap hit for that year, the way it worked out.
Right.
Once Ben Roethlisberger's cap hit went up, the Steelers made the Super Bowl in the uncapped year, so you can't even know what percentage it was of the cap. But they didn't. And some people are like, oh, well, that was more about injuries that kept the Steelers from the Super Bowl, in the 20 teens. But isn't part of the problem of not being able to overcome injuries is you don't have a deep enough roster? And a lot of that's because of the salary cap?
I mean, that argument, I mean,
Yeah.
It's an argument that can be made, sure.
Yeah, a lot of things to consider. So let's get on. Cam Hayward was named to the Pro Bowl today as a replacement. Should have been there in the first place. Second most sacks in his career and doesn't even make the Pro Bowl. And any other time he hit double-digit sacks for the season, he made All Pro. And this year he wasn't even going to make the Pro Bowl, but now he did. And so I'm happy for that. Steelers got him and Minka will be there because TJ Watt will not. It's the Pro Bowl games. I'm probably not going to watch any of it, but I just like to look at the accolades for the Steelers players.
Yeah, I won't have anything to do with it.
Yeah, some
other things to do this weekend.
Yeah, and some coaching hirings going on around the league, crazy, trading of first-round draft picks in order to hire a coach and stuff like that. Let's talk Steelers. Let's really dive more into Steelers. I mean, we've just been chatting here for a while, just like we're shooting the breeze, getting ready to go. Let's talk running backs. I don't know about you, but this is the best running back situation that the Steelers had in 2022 that I felt for a while.
Overall as a team, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, to come close to that, I would say, when you had Le'Veon Bell and James Conner as a rookie in 2017, but even then Bell was playing on the franchise tag, which I felt was a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I don't know how great that felt. Before that with James Conner, no, wait a second. That wasn't 28. That was 2018. Sorry, 28. My years are off. James Conner was a rookie in 2017, but he missed most of the season, didn't he?
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, or he missed a portion of the season. Anyway, maybe it was 20. I can't remember when all that stuff. Those years are all running together. I do remember sitting in the stadium and watching Le'Veon Bell get hurt the final week of the season on Sunday Night Football against the Bengals, which basically you're like, yay, the Steelers are going to win the North, and it's going to be a tough road to try to win the next week without a running back when they start someone off the street. So running back has been one of those things that's been a problem for the Steelers.
When's the last time you felt good? I mean, as good as you felt here? That's a great question.
I'd have to say Willie Parker and Jerome Bettis.
Maybe. Can we go back somewhere? Yeah. Maybe when we had, when your number two guy was, Chris Fuamatu Bad Malafala.
Bad Malafala. Yeah. There was also where you had when you had D'Angelo Williams backing up Le'Veon Bell. That was
True.
That was pretty good.
That was pretty good.
That was pretty good.
You know, do you get back to that with Fuamatu Malafala and Deuce Staley?
Yeah. So yeah.
Moelde Moore
Yeah.
was in that bunch in there as well. I mean, that wasn't necessarily a great. We didn't necessarily have what I would call a fantastic, great back like we have potentially with Najee, but it was a good room.
Yeah.
You know, you had faith in all, you know, in pretty much all of them. I don't know, but I'm like you. I'm feeling pretty good about. Now,
Let's
you know,
look.
we let's take a trip. Let's take a trip in Brian Anthony Davis in Bad's DeLorean.
Bad's DeLorean. There you go.
Let's go in Bad's DeLorean, and let's back up just a year. Just a year. To this conversation, what it looked like last year. What did this conversation look like last year?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Look at after coming up 2021, it was scary if Najee Harris, anything happened to Najee Harris. Look at what happened in week 18 against the Ravens. He gets dinged up. He comes out. The Steelers offense does nothing. He's got to come back in the fourth quarter to help propel them to a win in overtime. And you're like, if there's no Najee, there's nothing really going on. It was scary this time last year.
Yes, because, you know, and if we were having this conversation last year, the talk would have been, we have Najee Harris. And then what?
Yes.
At least this year, moving forward, I'm sitting here saying, okay, we have Najee and Jaylen Warren.
Yep.
Now, we might even have more than that. But I know we've got Najee and Jaylen Warren.
Yeah.
We're okay.
Well,
we're okay.
See, and last year, everyone's like, when are the Steelers going to add another running back? When are they going to add another running back? And I kept saying, I think they're going to add another vet in training camp or very late. You've got to remember, I sound like a broken record. I said it a bunch. I said, you need to get to a point where a guy that's a vet running back that's still on the street realizes that this late in the game, I'm not being signed to come in and split carries with Najee Harris 50-50. I'm coming in to be the guy and spell him and be ready to go if he gets injured.
Yep.
That's what I felt the Steelers were waiting for last year, to sign someone like that. And they kind of did. Do you remember the running back that they signed last year?
Kellen Balazs.
Oh, no, that was the year before.
Kellen Balazs. That was 2 years ago?
Well, because it wasn't in 2022. That was to start 2021.
Yeah.
So to start 2020, it was in training camp.
I don't remember.
I'm gonna mess up the name. I can't remember if his last name is a Mick or not. But it was hold on. Yeah, it is Mick. Okay. Jeremy McNichols.
Oh, that's right.
How many Steelers fans forgot about Jeremy McNichols? He had filled in for Derrick Henry in years past in Tennessee. The Steelers bring him in, and he gets hurt. And I think by the time he got hurt, I'd have to go back and see the timeline, and it might be that we didn't know. But the Steelers might have known then that they might have had something with Jaylen Warren because they didn't take another shot there. They didn't take another shot. So the Steelers were ready to have that veteran guy be the next guy, that like a Kalen Balazs, but at a higher level.
Yeah.
Because Balazs, he did not play anywhere in 2022. I think he's on a team for the USFL right now that's going to be playing later this spring, summer, whatever it is they play. So they were trying to go a little bit higher grade than that, an upgrade there. And then that didn't work out. But by that time, the Steelers got a better gem there. They really did.
Yeah, they did.
You picked him.
I did.
We talked about, Camp Phenom, right? Is that what the
Yep.
one we used?
I think so.
Wait, or did I keep saying Camp Phenom?
You kept saying Phenom, and I think we were to be saying Camp Darling.
Darling, yeah, there was a difference. Okay. Or I kept saying Darling, it was supposed to be Phenom. I can't even remember. We kept messing that up. But I had on my list.
Who kept messing that up?
Well, I said I kept messing that up.
I thought you said we. And
I kept.
No,
if I said we, I just misspoke. I kept messing that up.
Okay.
And we listed 5. I didn't even list Jaylen. I listed running back, but not him. I listed Mateo Durant, because if you look at it, when Jaylen Warren came in,
you got to remember though, I was at camp.
You were at camp.
What, third?
The second
fourth?
day. Yeah.
Yeah, early on, and I liked what I saw just in that day that I was there. So I had a little bit of inside.
Yeah. And I thought that Mateo Durant was ahead on the depth chart because he was given a bigger signing bonus as an undrafted free agent. So that right there told you that he should have been he was the bigger priority over Jaylen Warren. And then Jaylen Warren came in and just kept turning heads. Should have been the Redmond Award winner until someone finally was able to describe to me what that award is. That award isn't something a player should want to win, because it's basically the award. The way I figured the way it finally was described to me is the player's not all that good, but we've built them up to be something better than they were. So maybe Mark Robinson was more fitting with that one, but Jaylen Warren actually did play, actually did contribute, and Najee Harris was better down the stretch. He got healthy, but I wasn't worried when he went off the field.
Right, that was the thing. You weren't having the huge drop in that guy that was coming in to spell him. Like, in some ways, it was like, you know what? With Warren in there, he's actually really good at catching the ball out of the backfield.
Yeah.
Even better than, and Najee's good at catching the ball out of the backfield.
Yeah.
And Jaylen Warren might even be better.
And that's why I don't think Najee got nearly as many targets this year, because, well, my goodness, he was targeted like 14 times in one game last year. Because Jaylen Warren, I really chewed into that.
Got some of those targets, and that was okay. And for me, I like to think as the year went on and Najee got healthy, part of the reason he was able to get healthy is because they didn't have to lead on him for 85 to 90% of the snaps.
Here's what's interesting. This is going to be crazy when you really think about it, of how messed up it kind of is as a Steelers fan. I was not concerned if Najee Harris went down short term last year because I was confident in Jaylen Warren. Jaylen Warren missed one game last year. He missed week 12 against Indy. I was nervous going with that game. Because he only played 3 snaps against Cincinnati, got hurt early in that game. I was nervous in Cincinnati. That was at home against Cincinnati. And I was nervous that next week with Indy, because I'm like, if Najee goes down, now what? Now, in that Indy game, both Benny Snell and Anthony McFarland played well in that game.
Yes, they did.
They did. That's when the line was really starting to come together in the second half of the season. They both played well in that game. And I was more nervous knowing that the backup wasn't there than I would have been if the starter wasn't there, because I felt that the backup was capable. Isn't that kind of weird and irrational?
Well, no, not necessarily irrational. It was just, you knew that you were comfortable with the depth.
Yeah.
And then suddenly the depth changed.
Yes.
And so you had the feeling that the step, basically it was like instead of taking a small step from 1 to 2, you were potentially taking a much larger step, 1 to 3.
But I wasn't worried about having to go from 2 to 3. Isn't that weird?
Because again,
it is what it is.
Small step.
Yeah.
It's.
So we've talked a lot about Jaylen Warren. We're going to go ahead and take a break. We're going to come back, talk about a little Najee Harris, talk a little bit more of the depth after that, and see what it should be with the Steelers going forward. So if you're here with us on YouTube or Facebook Live, we'll be back in a few seconds. Here on the audio, check out these possible messages, and we'll be back in just a moment. And we are back, Pittsburgh Steelers fans. Let's keep rolling here talking about running back. Najee Harris. Was it the injury in the first half of the season? Was it the offensive line still being iffy? Was it the play calling philosophy between, you could talk about offensive line coach and offensive coordinator? Was it the quarterback situation? Was it what was it with Najee Harris where things just weren't? Was it the quality of opponents? What was it with Najee Harris in the first half of the season where he just wasn't the same?
Okay, I got an opinion on this, and believe it or not, I talked some with our dad about this one.
Okay,
so that's actually, and we were somewhat in agreement. Wow, yeah, I was kind of impressed.
Yeah, that's crazy. That meant he must have been thinking somewhat straight about stuff, not wanting to trade TJ Watt or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I see it as two major things and a third thing that was a little more minor. Okay. Najee, I think Najee was hurt. And so I don't think Najee had complete trust, ability, and agility and burst in his movement. Okay. So that was hindering him. Throw on top of that the fact that the offensive line had not gelled yet.
Yep.
And it was ugly.
Yep.
It was ugly. Now, the third thing, which I consider a little more minor, and it actually probably has a whole lot of little spindles off of it, was a combination of getting the offensive line coach, getting that line to gel, get into his good zone blocking scheme, which they got pretty good at, and getting Najee to trust that zone blocking scheme as well. As his health got better, Najee, quit dancing around back there looking for the hole. We're running this zone scheme. Get the ball. Go to where you know you should be going. The hole
trust
will
that
be
they're
there.
going to do what they need to do for it to work.
The hole will be there when you get there. And what do you know? Most of the time it was.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say, all those things I listed, I asked you if it was this, that, or the other thing, all those things. My answer to that would have been yes.
Could have been
In
some
other
of
words,
all of it.
It's a little bit of all of it, but some more than others.
I was going
to
say I was going a little bit beyond the typical Dave answer.
Yeah. Got to get that typical Dave answer. Yeah. Got to go beyond that. I feel like it was part of that. It really was. I think a lot of those things played into it, some more than others, and you really hit on the ones that I think were the biggest. Bottom line is, see, I brought up some things Thursday night on the preview, which is funny because I ran in, sat down in the chair, and we went live as soon as I came from Kyle's basketball game. Didn't really have time to gather my thoughts or anything of that nature. And but one of the things that I said about a storyline people aren't talking about was I said, the Steelers were the number one, they're the highest paid defense. Well, over the last 9 games, they should be doing better. Over the last 9 games of the season, they were the number 1 defense in the NFL. So they actually lived up to the hype. And then people were like, oh, but look at their schedule. Look at who they're playing. I'm like, so you want them to become more of the number 1 defense? It's not like they can become more number 1. They were number 1. Whether they were, because they had lesser opinion, did you want them to be a more of a number 1 defense? They were the number 1 defense. What more could they have done against that competition than be number 1? So yeah, you could take that. If they're like they were the number 2 defense, oh, well, it was bad competition. They should have been number 1. Well, that's because they could have, increase their rank. They couldn't increase their rank any higher. Now I can see what you're saying. They could have even played better defense, but all you can do is play the games that you have in front of you. And the Steelers played some really good rushing teams in the second half of the season when it comes to the defense. The Steelers defense playing the offense,
Right.
But they also played some really good rushing defense teams, like the Baltimore Ravens twice.
Yes.
And they still were able. I mean, when you outrush the Baltimore Ravens, where your defense is keeping them under what they normally do, and your offense is doing more against them than what they do, regardless of who the quarterback is, that's a good thing. So, yes, some of it was the opponents that they played. Yeah, they weren't always going up against the strongest run defense, but there was times that you're just like, okay, should they throw the ball because they're going up against good run defense? No, the Steelers, the last time they played the Ravens, they ran it anyway, and they were able to do it. To me, that was the game that showed it didn't matter who their opponent was. They were running the ball well.
Yes.
So, yeah,
They were
because
running
no,
the
the
ball
other
well.
ones you couldn't really take that. But for that their second matchup against the Ravens, you could really look at it that way. So we've got Najee Harris. We feel good about Najee Harris, right? We feel good about Jaylen Warren being a guy that's there that could, fill in if needs to be, but can really reduce the workload like he did this past year. Then beyond that, you've got the other running back that was on the roster all season was Benny Snell Jr. Only ran the ball, I'm pretty sure, in only one game. Key special teams guy. So, but he's a free agent. What do you think of Benny Snell Jr.? Do you think the Steelers should do anything there?
They could.
Yeah.
If they do, it's because they'll push to have him there because they say, hey, we're okay with him being the RB3 and a great special teams player.
Yeah.
And if they're okay with that and say, you know what, we can get him, for fairly cheap. He understands he'll be that depth piece and play on special teams. And if he's okay with that, it is the contract that the Steelers like, they could do it because then it's one less thing they have to worry about going into free agency, in free agency or the draft, one less thing they might have to worry about.
To me, your third option at running back has to do something on special teams. Whether a returner, whether a gunner, whether something.
Yes.
Because it's really hard to have that roster spot there. Kind of someone that you may never have play offense if they don't do anything else. Kind of like the fullback position for the Steelers anymore. They have to contribute in another way. There are guys that are the last guy getting a helmet at their position. They've got to contribute on special teams. Not quarterback. That one's a whole different monster. Even on the offensive line, those guys are out there on the field goal teams and things like that. So that's just one of the things they're going to need to do. So I can see people might be upset. Oh, wow, Benny Snell. If they bring Benny Snell back, it's because he fits that role that he can do that. But I also wouldn't fault him if he wants to go somewhere else.
Correct.
If he thinks he could be a running back.
Correct.
Okay?
If he thinks he can move up a depth chart by going elsewhere, we understand that, Benny Snell, and we will not. There's no way I would ever fault you for it.
And I'd like to see him do well, unless he's playing against the Steelers. Or unless he goes to a team in the AFC North.
Yeah.
Go to a team outside the AFC North.
Yeah, don't pull a Mike Hilton.
Heck, go to an NFC team. And as long as you're not playing the Steelers, I hope you do well. Really do. Like James Conner. I like to see James Conner doing well.
Yes.
When it's not affecting the Steelers at all. Great for that guy. Really. Really. I love him as a player. Wish he was, things would have been different, but I also understand the Steelers did what they needed to do. And it's exactly what happened. So the only other thing on the depth chart comes guys with futures contracts. And they were both players that spent either part of or all of the season on the Steelers practice squad. And that is Anthony McFarland Jr. and Master Teague. Our two running backs that the Steelers signed to futures contracts. I'm making sure. Oh, wait. And Jason Huntley, who spent the year on the practice squad. Well, at least part of the year on the practice
Part of it.
squad. I'm trying to see if there's any other running back, not one that I can see right now that they have as a futures contract. So we're going to get into, you know what, Rich? To get into this discussion, because we talked about the past, we talked about this year going on. Great running back room, feel good about it, everything else. Do you want to go ahead and do our big question now? Because in essence, that's where it is. Or do you have anything else you want to talk about first?
Hold on. Well, okay. I'm going to go ahead and bring this up.
Okay, that's fine.
Because technically it fits, because we're
Okay.
not going to do a week
Oh,
this by itself.
I know what you're doing.
Right? We have to bring up the fullback.
I have to bring up the fullback. Perfect. Yeah, you're exactly right.
Okay.
You're exactly right. I'm sorry. We could throw the fullback in with tight end, but no, we'll go ahead and do it here.
Let's go. I think I'd rather do it here.
Yeah.
Okay. So Derek Watt is a free agent, correct?
Yes.
And so the question is do the Steelers bring him back? Now, Mike Tom says since J.J. Watt retired, we have to bring Derek Watt back just in case TJ needs, a limb or an organ or, something like that.
A transfusion.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he could come back, and I could see that. Because of where he was on the free agent market a couple of years ago, we paid him pretty good over this contract. I would imagine that it will still be an okay contract if the Steelers bring him back, but it's not going to be along the same lines of the contract he just finished.
Yes. Derek Watt he turned 30 in November. He is 30 years old. The market for a 30-year-old fullback that are out there, like all pro kind of guy, Pro Bowl, that's not Derek Watt. And the thing with Derek Watt is the biggest thing that he had coming in when they signed him, that I said, this is what he brings to the Steelers more than anything: availability. Then what happens? He misses 4 games in 2020.
Yeah.
He played all 17 games in 2021. But what happened in 2022? He missed the entire preseason. I still think that's why he wasn't the special teams captain, because he didn't play all preseason.
Yeah.
So he was in 2021. So to me, Derek Watt, 30 years old, everything else, that's when you got to say to a guy, do you really think you're going to get a big contract somewhere else? We gave you the big contract when you were due for one. That's pretty big for a fullback. It's time to look at you, even if it's a year-by-year thing that's on the veteran salary benefit. We'll pay you, this amount of money that gives us a little bit of break on the salary cap.
And I think they should go ahead and write into the contract special bonuses in case we do take an appendage, an organ, or use him for a transfusion for DJ.
Yeah. Bottom line, if they want to do a 2-year deal, you do a 2-year deal, that allows you to half the money's paid as a signing bonus now. The other half is next year's salary. Or I'd say half the money's paid now between the base salary and the signing bonus. And then that way, if it's like, you're kind of done, you save half the contract and part of it gets spread into the next year. That's not a big deal if you do that, or you just bring him in for a cheaper deal. But if he's going to command a lot of money, I think I'd be really curious here. I don't want to go back and look at once again, I'm bringing up a topic that would require looking at every snap. I just got to ask Jeffrey what he remembers. How much did Derek Watt line up in the backfield in the I formation versus how much he lined up as an H-back?
Yeah.
If he's lining up as an H-back, that's something the tight ends can do, particularly Connor Hayward. I don't know about putting Connor Hayward in the eye and things like that. He's a little bit small. That's where Andrew Wilbur thought he was going to be, a fullback and not a tight end. I liked how the Steelers are using Connor Hayward. If you don't have Derek Watt, you at least have someone that if it's 5 snaps a game, that could go do that and play special teams and be the tight end. But I like having someone that can do it. So it's either got to be Derek Watt or someone that can fill in and do those kind of things.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm cool with Derek Watt back on the cheap.
Yep.
All right. You good with that?
Yes. Now we
Okay.
can go to your question.
Now we can go to the question. This is the final question to kind of talk about this. That we do every night. Last week, loved it. Didn't have people jumping the gun. Everyone remembered. I'm going to ask the question to Rich. He's going to answer. I'm going to answer. I'm going to put it out there in the live chat. You all are going to do it. And it's the same answers as it's been the last 2 weeks. The question is, the Steelers have their 1-2 punch at running back, assuming everyone's healthy and everything going into the season. Right now, if you're forming this roster, the question is, who's the number 3 guy? Who's the number 3 guy? Is it they were on the 2022 team that includes the practice squad? So if you're talking, it could be, it could be Snell, McFarland, even Teague. That would be roster that they were on last year's roster at some point. Is it someone that they're going to bring in free agency? Is it someone that are they going to use another late draft pick to try to get another running back or mid-draft? Well, they really have mid-draft picks. They don't have any in round 5 or 6. Or are they going to do a trade for a running back? Which I don't know if that would be the thing. So that's your 4 options. You're going to have that option. You're going to type in those words when I tell you it's ready. So Rich, where do you think the 3rd running back for the Steelers is coming this year?
I really feel that the Steelers are going to use this year to roll with what they've got, meaning that they're going to have somebody who was on the roster this past year, whether that is getting Benny Snell re-signed to a contract where he understands he's RB3 and play special teams, or Ant Mac or Teague probably coming up maybe to fill that RB3 role. That would allow the Steelers to not have to give up any draft capital in a trade or anything like that. Don't have to go out and search the free agent market. And don't have to use a draft pick somewhere for that. That would be really nice. Now, that's not to say that's what I'm saying. Probably 70% chance it's somebody that's on the roster. There's still a small chance that they could get a free agent. You just never know what could just stumble along that you couldn't. Omar Khan couldn't pass up the opportunity. Yeah. But I want to say it's probably much more likely coming from last year's roster.
And if I were to answer this question first, that's what I would have said. But what I'm going to do is, just for the sake of not saying the same thing, I'm going to say it's a scenario of, I'm going to say free agent. No, I'm not talking about someone that signs on agrees to a deal on the 13th or signs on the 15th. I'm talking someone who might come in the first week of training camp. Someone else might have been cut from somewhere else or whatever. There might be an injury. We need another running back here. They're going to bring in someone that's actually played in the NFL before, but they just happen to be out there. The Steelers bring him in, and what do you know? They want to keep him for the 3rd guy. Could even be like a Jeremy McNichols type person, because technically he was on last year's roster. People are so great. No one's jumped the gun. So there's the question. It is in the live chat now for people to go. So I know people were ready for that. Once again, man, it's great when people listen to the rules. It
makes us smile.
It just makes us smile. So you know what? This is why you guys have had,
we talking about practice.
You've had a lot of practice.
Not a game.
Oh, I clicked the wrong one.
Well, what else is new?
I wanted this one.
We talking about practice.
Yeah, we're talking about practice. You all had lots of practice doing this. If you're here in the off season, chances are you're someone who's here a lot.
Yep.
Especially this time of year. But yeah, we've got a bunch of them. So I am ready to dive in. Wait a second. I've lost I skipped. There it is. Haha. Steel Dog 88. He was ready first. He's saying it's on the roster. Yep. Brian Brown says on the team already. Richard Adamson says roster. I'm agreeing with a lot of these people. Steelers Pittsburgh on the team already. Johnny Rocket says roster. Okay. James Galloway says roster. Okay. Even referred to us as the brother Scho. Bart Mackey says roster. Joseph Donovan, roster. John Walter, roster. Claude Bishop, roster. He specifically gave who it was going to be. And which technically no, isn't on the roster now, but we're talking on last year's roster just for clarification in case you're just joining us. CD says undrafted free agent. So not just draft, specifically undrafted free agent. That's one we didn't throw in there. We kind of lumped those together with the draft. Another Jaylen Warren type. That's a good one.
That's always a possibility. That really comes down to what
we should have said
happens
rookie
in the draft.
Yeah, we should have said rookie. It could be draft. I'm including undrafted free agent with that. Thank you, CD, for pointing that out. Very good. Tyler W says draft. And that's what Jennifer was saying. Jennifer was saying draft or walk on. Jennifer, make sure you listen to Stat Geek Thursday. The question that I couldn't answer before, it's coming. It's coming. So I still need to figure out how to pronounce your last name so I can give you credit for that.
Don't I tell you like every week?
I can't remember. I look at it and then I forget.
Pricer.
Pricer? Okay, hopefully that's right. Okay, Thomas Riley, he says draft. So I think I'm alone with people saying what I was saying. It's a possibility if someone comes in from outside for that RB3. But I'm okay with what the Steelers have. Okay, Sherry Richards, thank you. Can't miss Sherry. Okay, UDFA. Undrafted free agent. Yeah, that's one that we should have specifically said. That's very, very possible because you know they're going to have someone, either an undrafted rookie free agent or rookie tryouts, because they're going to need a running back at rookie minicamp.
Correct.
So someone's going to have an opportunity there. I like players like a Benny Snell or Anthony McFarland as your third option, better than your first or second options. That's kind of like when we eventually talk about defensive tackle, Chris Wormley. Love him as the first guy in the rotation.
Yeah. Not
as much when he's your starter.
Right.
But on defensive line, you need someone like that. I really, I really do. So when you're talking about someone, by the end of the season, Malik Reed wasn't even the guy to be the third linebacker. The problem was when he had to be the second linebacker when TJ Watt was out, things of that nature. When someone is playing, one spot above where they should be. Some people were even saying that about, I'll get to that in a second, about like Dan Moore, rather than being your left tackle, being your swing tackle, being your reserve and stuff like that. These are the kind of things to remember. When guys that were up there get pushed down the depth chart, I like them a lot better where they are.
All right. So lifelong fan 07 says, in all honesty, RB3 is the last thing I'm thinking about.
I agree.
And look, believe it or not, that's kind of the point of this show tonight.
Yes.
Is we are so happy with where the running back room sits right now that really all we're seeing as a worry is who's RB3.
Yes.
And if that's all we're worried about in that room, that room is in really good shape.
Yes. That's the key. That's the key. That if that is what's going on, then that's good. We weren't talking about RB3 last year.
No,
we're talking about
RB2. That's right. It was RB2 because we didn't know.
The year before, what were we talking about?
RB1.
RB1. So we're moving one spot down each year. Mm-hmm. Who knows? Maybe next year we're not talking about it at all.
That's right.
Because RB3 is locked in. That, great place to be. Great place to be, especially in a position in the NFL that players are going to miss games.
Yes.
Players are going to miss games. A running back that goes 3 years without missing a game it's like a unicorn. It's so rare you can barely talk about it. So Rich, this was fun tonight. We talked a little bit about you
things before. This one because they were late with how they put it in there. So you thought you maybe didn't see it, but yeah.
So he's at the very end said the answer. Roster.
That's Tony Ringor said.
Yeah,
roster.
Tony Ringor says by the end roster. Yes. So we started off tonight. We had to talk about. It's just what you have to do, and some things going on. speaking of things going on, still lots of great stuff being covered at BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. Make sure you're checking it out. Another great article from KT Smith today. If nothing else, his articles run on Tuesday every week. It's when we run them. It's very rare that it's not a Tuesday. You've got to check the website on Tuesdays for that alone. I've got stuff out there all the time. I've been doing exit interviews for players, 2 of them every day. Been some good discussions and stuff there. Just lots of various things. I'm just guys ramping up for the draft.
Yep, guys ramping up for the draft, but also taking, this is a time where a lot of the writing we're kind of taking a different look at things, like looking at some things from slightly different perspectives, or really, I don't want to say stretching, that's the wrong word, but looking at potential possibilities. Sometimes you could say, yes, some of it's speculation, but we try to put as much real thought into, how it could potentially play out as we can. Like you said, there's still a lot of good stuff being pumped out.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't rest for us. It really doesn't. We're coming to you 24/7, 365. Thomas Riley asked a good question. When in March does free agency start? The legal tampering period starts at noon on Monday, March 13th. The official league year starts at 4 p.m. on March 15th. That's Wednesday. That's when all teams have to be salary cap compliant. I had a salary cap article today at the website after they came out with the definite amount. I gave my rough estimate, not my exact value, that were before I start keeping a running tab through the off season, because there's still a few question marks of things out there. And of course, our podcasts are still coming. So make sure you're checking them out. Tomorrow morning, you'll have another Let's Ride. I really enjoyed Jeffrey Benedict's cutting room floor this morning. He was talking wide receivers, spent a lot of time on Deontay Johnson and George Pickens, what they do well, what they don't do well, and how they're opposite things. And really dove deep into that. Some really good stuff. But there's something for everybody with our podcast. So if you still haven't found exactly what you're looking for, chances are try one of the ones you haven't checked out before. If you haven't listened to all of them before, you might be missing a gem. Rich, what do you have to say to close us out here tonight?
Oh, let's see. Finally,
no football this weekend, other than the Senior Bowl.
I was going to say, this is the first weekend in quite a long time that there's really not football.
Yeah.
There was air quotes around that, because there's really nothing going on, which is sad in some ways. Even more sad that, we're not getting ready for the Steelers to play the following week. But, our time's coming. So I'm going to take the weekend and do some other things. Actually, I
don't want to interrupt. You have to finish the thing. There's something I forgot to plug. I don't know if anyone else caught it. Monday on our audio only podcast, exclusive interview, Brian Anthony Davis with Calvin Austin III.
Oh.
Make sure you check that out. I checked that out. It's there. Anywhere you find podcasts, type in Steelers. We're going to Behind the Steel Curtain is going to be one of the top ones you find. Check that one out. That was good stuff. Go ahead.
Okay. So, I got another weekend where, let's see, I got a couple basketball games to call on Saturday. If the weather gets cold enough up here that I can keep from falling through the ice, I might do a little ice fishing on Sunday. Still finding things to do and relax. But one other thing that I will be doing is checking things out on BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers, because there's always, I'm serious. It is my way that I can stay connected to the Steelers all the time. And of course, next week I'll be right back here with Dave. We'll probably get a little Super Bowl preview in, but we're going to get right back into talking Steeler football. Probably going to be continue to break down some position groups like we've been doing the past few weeks. So, what's more exciting than the fact that I know that in another week I'll be sitting here with my brother like we used to do growing up, talking Steeler football. Can't wait.